This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance.
The West African ECOWAS bloc orders the deployment of its standby military force, moving a potential intervention in Niger one step closer. India passes a bill in Parliament repealing controversial sedition laws dating back to colonial times. Senators in America call for a cut to existing military aid to Egypt, citing human rights concerns, while seemingly turning a blind eye to crimes taking place in Ukraine. Also ahead.
All the hopes and dreams of a whole community riding on this vast machine as it actually takes off, this magnificent machine powering up towards the cosmos.
Russia heads to the moon for the first time in almost half a century as part of its ambitious lunar program for the coming years. Live
can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Some things just make you feel more alive than others. Like the rush of adrenaline from an SUV that roars from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Jaguar delivers that thrill every day. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Will Turkey ratify Sweden's NATO membership? Stockholm says it can't fulfill all Ankara's demands. As the bloc's membership requires unanimous approval, what would make Turkey change its mind? And what does all of this mean for NATO's future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. One of the many fallouts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been that previously neutral Nordic countries
Now that's volume at 14. Let's get some volume.
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice slow, so you're sitting up super high. You also have these very rectangular little windows. The windshield's tiny, and you have a very good view because you're sitting up so high and stuff. But it's just, if you're used to any of the old Hummers, you'll feel right at home in this with the way that it feels with the view out. Now, it still has excellent visibility, and also it helps it feel a little more airy whenever you have these transparent roof panels. It makes it a lot more airy. And also, like the B pillars, A pillars are all pretty thin as well. Other things to notice here. So if you're very quiet, you'll notice it does make these little, fake sounds to make it feel a little more futuristic and stuff. Unfortunately, they're too quiet. I actually like the way they sound, but they're very, very quiet. I wish you could amp them up or, make them a little built in. And you can't have super quick steering in something like this, just for rollover reasons. So, I get that they had to, keep it, more relaxed and that. Let's turn down onto this back right here and see how it does. Here we go. All right. It still picks up nicely. And wow, that's interesting. So unlike some other electric vehicles, as you get to higher speeds, it starts to pull like harder and harder. It's very interesting with the way that's set up. So anyway, yeah, and wow. And whenever you put your foot down, it really lifts up the nose so much because of how soft the suspension is here. And again, with that building acceleration G, it really gets more and more exciting the longer you put your foot into it, which is the polar opposite of most other EVs. And it's a welcome change. So it's a lot of fun. So anyway, whenever you don't have that loss of freedom mode going, you're going to have 830 horsepower, but it's the full 1,000 horsepower in that mode. You also have 1,200 pound-feet of torque. And in that loss of freedom mode, you'll get a 3-second 0 to 60 time. But Car and Driver did test a 5 to 60 rolling acceleration, and in that setting, you're going to be doing about a 4.9 seconds 0 to 60, which is most likely kind of like what I experienced there. It wasn't a mind-blowing 3 seconds 0 to 60 run. in under 5 seconds is still a impressive quick time, especially for something as enormous as this is that's really not focused on acceleration at all, honestly. So it's impressive, but if you're just rolling around with your buddies and you floor it, it might not elicit the same kind of crazy reactions you get out of someone whenever you're driving a Tesla Plaid or any other wide variety of EVs that have that instant punch and a huge amount of pull even without that mode. This is definitely still going to be funny that it's going as fast as it is, but it's not quite as mind-blowing as you might be expecting when you see that spec sheet. You also hear, you actually do hear the electric motors whirring a little bit. It's kind of funny just how much of that you hear. Also on this rougher road, honestly, not too much road noise at lower speeds here. You do hear some rattling and creaking, though, from these removable roof panels. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But anyway, we're coming to some corners here, and let's see how this 9,000-pound EV handles. All right, so it actually handles decently for what it is. Now, the only reason why is because this thing has four-wheel steering. And with that four-wheel steering, you can turn those rear wheels up to 10 degrees, and so that really, really helps with the handling of this thing. And because of that, it has a turning circle that's equivalent to like the average compact SUV, and it's pretty wild, and it makes it much easier to park one of these things as long as you can find a space that's big enough for it. But at least maneuvering it is, pretty easy, so that's good. And so handling is actually, quite good for something that's on 35-inch mud tires, that's 9,000 pounds, that's as high up as this thing is, that is not set up for any kind of backroads carving whatsoever. It handles pretty well. Now, it is a little disorienting at first whenever you're using the four-wheel steer. You can turn it off, by the way, too, if you want. If you want to just have a more traditional feel, you can turn it off. I've gotten used to it pretty quickly. Like the first few miles, I was like, "Whoa, this feels kind of weird," because it almost feels like it's like the back end is like artificially like stepping out on you just because you're like turning the wheels. But as you get used to it, it really feels natural, and then just makes this a lot more friendly to just drive around because that really masks the mass of this thing. So I actually love the four-wheel steer. I think it's great and makes life a lot easier when you're driving one of these things. I'm not much of an off-roader, so I'm also not going to go into the off-roading stuff as much as some of the other channels out there that focus on that are much better at discussing all the off-road stuff than I am. But what I can say is, the overview highlight stuff is it has locking diffs front and rear. The rear is a virtually locking diff, but has 11.9 inches of ground clearance in the terrain mode. In the extract mode, you'll have 15.9 inches of ground clearance. And so, obviously this air suspension this thing has, you can raise it or lower it for whatever your needs are. And along with that, you also have a bunch of different modes that will help, walk you through whatever kind of terrain you're facing. There's a terrain mode, but there's also a tow and haul mode to help you with that. And I love the animation that shows it towing a Saturn V rocket. It's so cool. But you also do have like the mud modes and all that kind of stuff to help you with rougher terrain. And so you also have the crab walk feature that has been highly advertised, so that allows you to kind of do a little bit of a sidestep there with the four-wheel steer. A very cool touch if you are in the very rare situation where something like that would come in handy. It is nice to have, but I think honestly it's just a really cool party trick. Like a lot of the things in this vehicle, how many people are actually going to use a lot of these features, I don't know, but it's a cool party trick. This thing also, in other party trick news, has a ton of different cameras. All the usual cameras for like a 360 view, forward, rear cameras, overhead, view of the bed, view of the hitch, all those types of things it can do. But it also does have underbody cameras, and so the underbody cameras, enable you to see what's going on underneath the front and underneath the back. So if you're trying to clear things, you can have that. You also do have skid plates and all that to help you be protected whenever you're driving off-road as well. But do another acceleration, you're stopping on it. It's funny though, I almost have to like adjust the steering whenever I'm driving this thing, even just to keep it going straight. It's so funny how loose the steering is, but it's definitely just, keeps you on your toes a little bit. It makes this more of an adventure. You're more involved in the driving experience because you're sawing back and forth with the wheel here all the time. And, it's the same kind of fun, you'd see from a Wrangler as far as, the handling and steering and stuff goes. But one thing to keep in mind though is that weight. So, 9,000 pound curb weight, give or take a couple hundred pounds, again, depending on how it's configured, is really, a kind of weight that you have to be mindful of. Even if it, drives great, handles great and all that, you just have to be aware of the physics of that kind of, weight. And like, we'll do a little bit of a quicker stop here. you know, it slows itself down, but, you know, it's not going to be super fast just because it can't be. You know, I think these things break about as quickly as any kind of 2500 series truck, or maybe even a little bit, you know, longer than that. So, I mean, long braking distances, you just have to be mindful. You gotta just make sure you're planning out your, you know, movements a little bit more, I guess you could say. And so, you know, that's just one thing of these. It's, you know, it's almost so heavy that it's a little bit sketchy at times. That, you know, you're on some slippery terrain, for example, where weight is a disadvantage. Things like that, you know, you're gonna have to keep that in mind, especially when you're off-road and on trails and things like that. It does, of course, have hill descent control and all those types of things as well. And so you also do have regen here. So if you want, there's this cool little paddle on the steering wheel, and that allows you to do some more intense regen here. And it's almost like an on-demand one-pedal mode, where, you know, you can pull that just temporarily for whatever stop. And I kind of like that. I think it's a really cool idea. It looks a little unsymmetrical, you know, with the steering wheel design here to have only one paddle, so to speak. But it's really cool because, you know, there are certain times where I don't need, you know, tons of regen, and I don't really need a one-pedal mode. I'm fine driving like a normal vehicle most of the time, but it is nice to have that if you are trying to do a little bit of extra regen for whatever reason. You can pull on that, and it gives you that, you know, right away. And so, as far as other electric components are concerned, so it has a 212.7 kilowatt hour battery, and it'll do, like I said, 329 miles of range. And also, it does 350 kilowatt fast charging, which is awesome as well. And I can say that whenever this vehicle was dropped off to me, I immediately had to go and charge it. And whenever I hooked it up to a 350 charger, an EVgo charger, it was able to pull. I was at like 16% battery whenever I got there. It was able to pull 310 kilowatts down, you know, like immediately, and it was holding that, you know, pretty well as far as the sustained charge rate until I got up to some higher percentages there, where it slowly would start to, you know, drop off and level off. And EVgo is great with how they kind of chart out, you know, your charge rates and all that stuff. But it's a pretty quick charging thing, even though it's a massive battery. And so, for example, in my experience, I sat at the charger for about 42 minutes, and I went from 16% battery to almost 80% there. And obviously, you know, that's a long time to be sitting, you know, 42 minutes. But obviously, you don't have to, you know, go that long, and, you know, a lot of that fastest charging was done in those lower percentages. So if you're okay working with, you know, the lower ranges of the battery, you can really, you know, maximize that charge rate a lot more, and, you know, probably cut down on that time without, you know, affecting the battery charge too much. And so anyway, you know, I'm just pretty impressed. I mean, that's very fast charging, and, you know, it's right towards the top of the pack out there as far as EVs here at the end of 2022. I mean, you know, like my Mach-E that I have at home currently, I mean, that does like 150 kilowatt charging in perfect conditions. So I mean, this is really nice and fast, and obviously it goes through the battery a lot faster. But 329 miles of range is a good amount of range, and again, also towards the top of the pack, you know, as far as most, you know, mainstream EVs go these days. The only thing that isn't great from an EV standpoint, though, is the efficiency of this thing. And I will be driving this vehicle for an entire week, so I'll come back and give you my final efficiency later. But what I can say right now is that over the 20 miles I've driven so far, I've been getting 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is bad. You know, like for, again, reference, my Mach-E that I have does at least 3 miles per kilowatt hour, so double the efficiency of this thing. Obviously, you know, that is much lighter, much more aerodynamic, much smaller, much less powerful. So, you know, this is like you would see with any, you know, gas-powered vehicle, where something with a ton of power and weight is going to get worse fuel economy. And I got, you know, 10 miles per gallon in a Ram TRX versus 20 miles per gallon in, you know, Mustang GT or something. But it's just, the fact is, it's just, you know, it's not very efficient. So, you know, it's an electric vehicle, but I mean, the way that it burns through electricity is really not economical by any means. But, you know, just part of the price you're paying for, again, all the crazy awesome stuff this thing has. And so now we're up at some slightly higher speeds here, doing about 45 miles per hour, and even on this brand new perfectly paved road, you know, you're starting to hear some road noise for sure. That's the nature of 35-inch tires, though. So, you know, again, this goes back to, yes, the thing was expensive, but don't expect it to be luxurious. It's, again, focused on wowing you with its off-road performance, wowing you with the you know, straight line performance and all these other various things. But you don't think that this is some luxurious thing, because it isn't, at least not yet. Maybe they will do more luxurious versions down the road, but as of right now, this Edition 1 is, you know, very focused on just being an intense off-roader, and so you just have to, you know, be prepared and mindful of that. Alright, so now I'm out on the highway here in the Hummer EV, and I'm going hands-free because I have the Super Cruise enabled and it's functioning here, and so we're just cruising here hands-free. I love Super Cruise. It's hands down the best hands-free system out there these days. It is just so good. It's so confidence-inspiring, and it's not the most advanced as well because it actually does intelligent lane changes, so it'll do an automatic lane change with no need to do any kind of turn signal or anything like that from the driver. It'll put on the turn signal automatically, but it does those passes automatically for you if it sees that there's a chance. And I got to test this out a good bit already in the Escalade V that I recently reviewed. And it's testing it out here again in this. It's just the same great, you know, accuracy with just being perfectly in the middle of the lanes. It's also intelligent where if it sees a vehicle in, you know, the left side or on the right side or wherever, you know, it always tries to, you know, stay away from traffic a little bit. So it's intelligent about, you know, being in the right part of the lane, you know, so that you're not feeling uncomfortable hugging, you know, the middle of the lane or the left side of the lane whenever there's a massive 18-wheeler next to you, you know. And so I love the way that it positions you, and I also like that, you know, I mean, even though the steering isn't super precise here in the Hummer, and you know, this thing is, you know, just a little more loose, it still does a great job of just being very precise and accurate with its steering. Now, the other thing you'll notice here, though, is, you know, out on the highway, 60 miles an hour here, not high highway speeds, honestly, 60 is pretty low. There's still a lot of road noise in here, so I'm raising my voice just to talk here on camera, and you know, it's just a vehicle that, you know, if you're on the highway for long periods of time, it probably won't be the most comfortable. If you're, you know, again, planning to spend 6 figures on something and you want to have Super Cruise and have a really nice highway driving experience, I'd certainly go for an Escalade. But again, this is not what this is about. Just, again, drives in the fact this is not a luxurious vehicle, but it's great to have the Super Cruise here to give you a nice, you know, bit of relaxation whenever you're out on the highway here, just having your hands resting on your lap, just watching the road ahead. It does a really good job, and even we're entering construction zone here, very tight with the guardrail and stuff, so I'm going to kind of hover my hands a little bit. And I love that Super Cruise also lets you make adjustments on your own without disengaging the system. But again, thanks to GMC here, I'll have the Hummer EV for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world efficiency numbers, as well as my thoughts on the pricing, how it compares to its competition, and the other things you can get out there, and anything else that I noticed during my week of driving. And here we go. Wow, wheels spinning. Wow. So that's that definitely feels like a 3 seconds 0 to 60 time. Woo. That was fun. Wow. Woo, yeah, it's fun to, you know, try that out to get the true potential of this thing, because that's a rush. That is a rush. Wow, it's not the fastest accelerating vehicle I've ever tested. That probably, still that crown goes to the Tesla Model S, not the Plaid, but the P100D. Sorry, my brain's a little scrambled after that. But, oh man, that was fun. Whew. Yeah, 3 seconds definitely sounds accurate, and doing it in something this enormous is a blast. And I also love how the suspension really, I mean, that front nose lifts up because, again, you're doing this launch in something with the kind of, you know, softer setup this has, and again, getting the wheel spin out of something as well. 4 wheels spinning whenever you have these, you know, 35-inch tires. It's hilarious. Ooh, sorry, it actually took my breath away. Wow. Yeah, that is impressive. That is definitely takes, you know, one of the top spots in the Matt Moran ranking of crazy accelerations that I've ever done. Alright, so I've been driving the Hummer EV here for a week now, and it's been an absolute blast to drive this thing. It is so quick and just, you know, so just gutsy in so many different ways that it just, you feel really awesome driving it, you know, is the bottom line here. Obviously, you're up super high, that adds to that feeling. And, you know, I am honestly just impressed that it is such a friendly thing to live with, because usually something this massive, you know, is just a pain to drive around, you know, a lot of the times. And obviously the width here, you know, is something you have to be mindful of, and there was a few instances where I was on either a tighter road or in, close quarters where I'm, kind of sweating the width a little bit. But aside from that, it's very easy to drive. The four-wheel steer is my favorite thing, I think, about this vehicle, honestly, because it is an absolute lifesaver in parking lots. It makes it so much easier to maneuver. It makes this thing just feel a lot less intimidating to drive than it honestly should feel. It should feel more intimidating and harder and more difficult than it is. And the fact that they made this so accessible, so easy to drive, and that it has as good of road manners as it does, honestly, I think is the most impressive thing about this. Obviously, there are still some compromises here, due to the, loud tires that are enormous. But the ride is so comfortable with this air suspension, and I got used to the loose steering pretty quickly as well, so that honestly didn't bother me, as, a day or two went by. It was something I was already used to and, had no complaints with. So the last two things I mentioned here about the Hummer EV are its efficiency numbers, or lack thereof, and also the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first off, those efficiency numbers. So these are rated at 51 mpge in the city, 43 on the highway, and 47 combined. And if you look at any other EV, they all do much better efficiency numbers. I mean, just for reference, again, like the Mach-E that we have at my house, those are, in the 80s, I believe, for the MPGe ratings, which is kind of an irrelevant number in some ways. It doesn't really have any, bearing on actual fuel efficiency or anything like that. But just as far as my driving here now, 164.5 miles of driving I've done, my mileage rating is 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which again is about half the efficiency of my Mach-E on a bad day. So, again, goes with having 1,000 horsepower, having, it hauling around, 9,000 pounds, and terrible aerodynamics of this thing, having the same, aerodynamics as a condominium, I mean, it's just not going to be good from an efficiency standpoint. No one expects that, so I'm not going to get into this. But, it's just worth noting that, it's not very efficient, and so therefore not very green with its use of electricity, even though, again, it is electric. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's, economical or anything like that. That also means, you have to make sure that you definitely either have a lot of fast chargers around you, because it is such a huge battery to fill. So you got to make sure you have either really the top-notch, like 350 kilowatt fast chargers to fully utilize the fast charging, or make sure that you have a garage or a driveway that are plenty large enough to plug this thing in at your house. And like my average size garage, for example, couldn't fit this, so I was stuck going to fast chargers every time I needed to charge. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first, pricing. This one asked us is $110,295 to be exact. And at 110, it's insane, in every single way. And so I think the price being very high also makes sense. You have to make sure you have the right expectations. You have to make sure that you are understanding that you are paying for the off-road performance, you're paying for the fact that it has 1,000 horsepower, and it's kind of like that performance car thing, where you're paying for the performance, you're not paying for necessarily the rest of the vehicle. It doesn't feel like a $110,000 vehicle here inside, not even close in my opinion. I think most people buying these, they don't really care that much, and it's nice enough to not, upset anybody, but it's just, if you're someone who, wants something luxurious, obviously you're better off getting an Escalade or something for the same price than a fully loaded Escalade at that, for 110. But if you can afford to spend about $40,000 or so more, I would recommend the Escalade V. That gives you, the insane performance of a supercharged giant V8 engine. It's definitely different in its vibe than this, being futuristic with the electric thing and all that, but also very impressive performer, and you have way more comfort and way more luxury, much better stereo.
Crocodile tears continue to flow, as do their sanctions on the people of Niger. The European Union's working on its first package of sanctions as we speak, while the
Now that's volume at 14. Let's get some volume.
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seating, pretty, nice and high sitting position here, very crossover-like, of course. And visibility is pretty good as a result since you're sitting up a little higher. You do have some thicker A-pillars, but they are swept back a good bit, so it's out of your primary, field of vision here and hasn't gotten in the way, at least so far. View out of the back is also great, typical hatch, crossover kind of fashion. And so very easy to drive. It doesn't feel too big or anything either. It feels, nice and compact for this segment, of course. And it just feels really good. The only thing I will say, though, is that I wish the steering wheel went down a little bit lower because it's angled upward just a little bit more than I would like, and there's no way to have it go down any further. This is also the lowest that this seat will go down, and so me, even being just 5'9", I still have plenty of headroom. This one doesn't have the moonroof, but I've just noticed that I just wish it would go down a little bit more. So you really do definitely have a, crossover SUV kind of seating position no matter how you have it set up. You have this 9-speed automatic here in these regular GTs, because you only get paddle shifters on the RT, which is kind of strange because this is, marketed as a sporty vehicle. And let's do an acceleration, and here we go. All right. I actually felt the front wheels twitch a little bit there, even though this is all-wheel drive as standard on all of these. But it gets up and goes pretty nicely, so it's technically under $30,000. It's the fastest and most powerful thing you can get. So this runs the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the Hurricane 4 here in the GTs, and it does 268 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. It'll do a 6.5 seconds 0 to 60. And so the engine is a really nice engine. Like I said, it sounds pretty nice with the growl you get here. It's also both port and direct injected, so you have the best of both worlds there for better durability, reliability, all of that. It's a good amount of power. Like I said, it's more than any of the others offer under 30. Now, whenever you go up to stuff beyond $30,000, there is also the Mazda CX-30 Turbo, which does less horsepower but more torque. That does 320 pound-feet of torque. But I gotta say, this feels pretty close to that as far as power goes. I think that the CX-30 Turbo might feel a tiny bit punchier in some instances, but this feels really good. And we're also on some windy corners here now. And one thing that is interesting, so Sport Mode does give you heavier steering. It also retunes the transmission settings here. You also get dual stage dampers, so they actually get to be a little bit firmer here in Sport Mode. That is something you get with the track package, which also gives you the sportier 235 wide tires instead of 225s, and they're Michelin Pilot Sport all-season tires here on these upper trims. When you go to the base 17s, it doesn't get the sporty tire. But as far as the handling goes, so one thing I'll say, so they got the weight down pretty good. So it's 3,715 pounds here for the GTs, and it feels pretty substantial as far as it feels nice and planted. It feels very confidence inspiring. Now, I will say the steering, it is a little heavier here in Sport Mode, but it sometimes oddly feels a little light and a little disconnected. I wish it was a little more direct feeling, but it feels pretty good overall. Also here with the track package, you get Brembo 4-piston brakes up front, and they bite pretty well, but honestly, I was expecting a little more bite right at the top of the pedal. There's more of a gradual ramp up to the braking, and but once you do get on them, then they do bite down really nicely. You do have a little bit of wiggle and lean here, but it is a crossover once again. this isn't a sports sedan or anything, so you have to cut a little bit of a break. But I will say that I do think that the CX-30 Turbo feels a little bit sharper and a little less wiggly here whenever you're doing like a simulated slalom kind of thing. Here's a nice tight corner coming up on. It's kind of like a decreasing radius thing here. And so body control is really nice, so there isn't really much lean. And it feels pretty good, honestly, though. It still is definitely one of the top handlers in this segment. You got to remember that the subcompact thing here, there really isn't that much that's really sporty aside from, the CX-30 Turbo and like the Hyundai Kona N, which is front-wheel drive only. So, it certainly, immediately puts it right towards the top of the pack. Just the fact that they even cared about the sporty thing when most of the others that this kind of competes with don't even really care about performance. And Dodge is also proud to say that they have the best-in-class stiffness as well. So really a nice, solid platform. That's what I'm really feeling, is it really does feel very solid with the way that it does handle. And also their weight distribution is really good as well. So it's 52 front, 48 rear, and that's also something that's pretty uncommon in this segment to even consider weight distribution, honestly. So the fact that, you know, it's very evenly distributed here, especially in the GT, is really great. And so, I mean, you can feel all those performance benefits here, you know, on these corners. I love that, you know, they gave it the good grip. You have the all-wheel drive, which is typically a 50-50 split. It doesn't get any rear bias settings or anything like that, unfortunately, but it is a torque vectoring all-wheel drive system as well. Now, it's a brake-based torque vectoring, but it does do the torque vectoring thing as well. And so, you know, it all just works together to give this vehicle, you know, a very planted feel. All right, so now we've got some nice tight corners here. We can try out how this thing handles whenever you're pushing it a little bit more on some tighter circumstances here. Nice little back and forth here, nice tight switchback. All right, yeah, it's feeling pretty good. This 9-speed though, I do wish I, you know, was able to control it a little bit easier, because even in sport mode here, transmission keeps wanting to upshift and like save fuel economy. It's like, no, I want you to stay in those higher gears. So we'll try manual mode here so it sticks to a good gear. See how that does. It handles very well. It's very, very impressive with the handling for sure. One other thing though I will say about this engine is it redlines, it looks like it's about 5,500 RPM, so not a huge power band. Honestly, a very low power band compared to a lot of the other competitors. I mean, most stuff these days will, you know, rev out to 6,500. This does not. But you know, it's certainly punchy. You have that great torque, you know, a ton of torque, and so I mean, it still powers you out of corners really well. And yeah, it's doing a good job here for sure. And now we have some more tight corners here, and we're going downhill more so now. So the transmission isn't really getting in the way as much as it was when we were going uphill. And it feels really great going around these corners. And so I don't want to discount the handling. It certainly handles very, very well. And you know, I just wish that the transmission tuning was a little bit better and that the steering was a little bit sharper. If those two things were a little bit better, I think this would really be top notch. As it is, it's good, but not great in my opinion as far as the handling. But again, for a subcompact crossover, having one with any kind of performance lean at all is a gift, so I'm not complaining. But you know, just was expecting a little bit more out of the Hornet. But you know, even, I mean, this road's got some off-camber parts and some little undulations and bumps, and it's all very composed and does a really good job of soaking all that stuff up and just feeling so confident and capable whenever you're pushing it around these corners. And now I'm out on the highway here in the Hornet, and I have the adaptive cruise control on with the lane centering function turned on, so that will do some steering assist for you. You still have to have your hands on the wheel, but it does do the steering, and I'm just kind of, you know, letting my hands kind of rest on the wheel gently and letting it do the steering here, and it's really impressive. So the adaptive cruise and this lane centering are not standard. You do get lane keep assist is standard, and you know, regular cruise control, but the adaptive stuff here is only in this extra package. But it's doing a really good job here. Other safety tech that is standard is automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, and a lane keep assist system. So there is some lane keeping assist even in, you know, vehicles that don't have this extra tech package on it. But it's really doing a good job here so far, just my limited experience. We have, you know, some gentle corners and stuff, and it's been doing that pretty well. I will say the lane centering isn't perfect, but it's actually favoring the shoulder side of the highway, which I actually prefer, you know, so you're not too close to other vehicles. But it's doing a really good job. It's doing confident steering here, and overall I'm pretty impressed with this you know, system so far. Obviously I'll have to do some more extensive testing whenever I have one of these for a week, but first impressions here is that it's a really nice adaptive cruise control system and does really do some solid helpful steering assist as well. Alright, so now I'm trying out the RT plug-in hybrid version here, and so it has over 30 miles of electric range, they're saying, thanks to a 15.5 kilowatt-hour battery. And so as far as the driving experience here, well, I'm currently in the hybrid mode. There's a hybrid, an e-save, and an electric mode, as well as the sport mode. And the hybrid mode will prioritize depleting that battery and just going on electricity alone, unless you're going for a full throttle acceleration where it'll kick on the gas engine to help you out, or if you're just trying to, you know, go and you don't have enough battery charge, then it will of course kick on the gas engine. But you know, in hybrid mode here, you know, since I'm just driving with electricity alone, you have a good amount of punch from that rear motor, so that I'm able to accelerate, you know, get up to speed, do, you know, little around town passes, things like that without any kind of problem. And it seems to be a good amount of, you know, punch here from the electric motors so far. And like now, just accelerating from a stoplight, no problems keeping up with traffic, getting up to speed here in the electric mode here. So, I mean, a good amount of punch there so far. And other things here, so you do have a little bit more weight here. So the thing with the plug-in hybrids is they weigh 425 pounds heavier than the GT non-hybrid version. So these end up being about 4,140 pounds. And thankfully, though, the weight is all the batteries that are in the floor there, so nice and low with that center of gravity for that extra weight. And so I'll have to go on some tighter, windier corners to figure out, how this handles compared to the GT version. By the way, this one does also still have the track package on it, and it's still got these Alcantara seats and all that. But so this one should be pretty identically equipped to that GT that I was just in. Here we go. All right. Yeah, that is the extra punch I was looking for out of the Hornet. You can really tell in the mid-range, especially, where the gas engine is still pretty punchy on its own. I think it does almost 200 horsepower on its own, but then you have that electric motor that really gives you that extra mid-range there and kind of fills in some of the turbo lag you have a little bit of with this engine, but it feels punchy. This is definitely the one to get if you want the most exciting driving experience. I think it's definitely something you're gonna pay extra for. It doesn't come cheap, but if you want a subcompact crossover with the most power possible, this is the way to do it. It's the 1.3 liter turbo 4, and combined with the electric motor, it does a total of 288 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque. It's only about 20 more horsepower, but you have almost 90 more pound-feet of torque, and then with the power shot function, that gives you an extra 30 horsepower for those 15 seconds, and then it cools off, and then you can do that again after another 15 seconds. But you can do it also either when you're stopped or when you're rolling, so it's great for passing maneuvers and things like that. Now, it is only 30 more horsepower, so it's not mind-blowing with, how much quicker it'll be, but they do say that with power shot mode, it will speed up the 0 to 60 supposedly by 1.5 seconds, and so it drops it down to a 5.6 seconds 0 to 60 here for this. And so yeah, it definitely feels punchy for sure. And yeah, I also gotta say that I think, so in sport mode, steering gets a little tighter in both of these, but I feel like the steering is a little sharper and more direct here in this. Interestingly though, this has a slower steering ratio. It's I think 14.6 to 1 versus like the 13.6 to 1 you have in the GT, but it just, I don't know, it feels really good. I'm definitely digging the RT a little bit more than the GT. The GT is still great and it's definitely the value winner for sure, but if you have a little bit more money to spend here, I'm gonna say the RT, yeah, that electric punch in the mid-range is what really makes this exciting to accelerate in. And then the extra perks, you get the 30 miles or over 30 miles of electric range they're claiming out of this 15.5 kilowatt hour battery as well. And so overall, it's seems to be a pretty compelling combo here. And I also love that you have these giant paddle shifters. It's one of the great carryovers from the Alfa Romeo Tonale and Alfa Romeos in general. You have these column-mounted paddle shifters, and that is one of the difference here. Is you have a 6-speed Aisin automatic versus the 9-speed automatic in the GT. And right now in automatic mode, we're still in sport mode, but it's kind of confused. It really is eager to do the downshifts, which is good. It's more eager than the 9-speed was in the GT, but it's really hopping around with the shifting a good bit here. So we're going to try out some manual shifts here, see how that does. Okay, pretty quick for the downshift. Do an upshift here. Alright, so not quite as snappy as the ZF8 speed. If you're used to other Dodges or other Alfa Romeos even, they all use ZF8 speeds. This is not going to be as quick as that. Downshifts are close, but it's the upshifts where, even at full throttle there, it wasn't upshifting as fast as the ZF8 speed. So not as enjoyable to use these paddles as it is in an Alfa Romeo Stelvio, like the one I just reviewed recently, but still nice and still feels pretty good. And so yeah, I'm going to have to spend more time in an RT. I just have a quick little loop here in this to get a sense of it, but I'm hoping to spend an entire week with both the GT and the RT at some point to really dive into the different personalities of these two models. One other thing too is that in addition to having more of that weight lower with the center of gravity with the batteries, you also do have a ride height that's over an inch lower here on the RT compared to the GT. So that's also a nice little perk here. So I think that's part of also why this feels a little bit better in the handling department. And so I'm just really impressed with the RT here so far. And it's just great. You also have the great fuel efficiency of the hybrid component and the electric thing. So you have really the best of all the worlds. You have the best performance, you have the best efficiency. We haven't gotten any kind of fuel economy ratings for the RT version yet, so I can't say definitively, but I would hope that this is going to get better fuel economy than the regular GT version without the hybrid stuff. So you get, great efficiency, the best power, and still really great handling and all that as well. So I'm glad that, those extra 425 pounds, don't really saddle this vehicle much more than the regular GT. I think it feels, just as good, honestly, with the handling. It's also great you still have these Michelin Pilot Sport 4 all-season tires. You have the Koni adjustable dampers, all the other great stuff from the GT as well. So yeah, it really feels good. This is a solid little combo for sure, and I'm glad to see that they went for the performance angle for the plug-in hybrid here in this instead of just making it super efficient. I like you got so much power and so much extra fun here with the RT. And I now popped it over into the electric mode. We're kind of rolling at about 30 miles per hour. I'm just going to put my foot to the floor and just see how punchy this electric motor is on its own. Here we go. Alright, so it kicks on the gas engine and overrides your selection of the electric thing if you do request maximum power. So we'll go back into electric. I'll try and go right above full throttle and try this again. Here we go. Alright, so it's a good amount of punch. I have to say, it's pretty good. One of the best as far as plug-in hybrids that I've experienced as far as how much punch you have. Now, I don't think it's quite as good as like a RAV4 Prime, for example. I think that still feels a little punchier in electric mode than this does, but it's not far off. This is still very good, and I think, for some milder highway merging and, milder passes and things like that, you could totally do it all in electric mode here. It really is a solid electric motor, and it's not like some of these others where you have, 20 horsepower in the back, giving you some rolling, stop and go capability or something. Like this is a nice punchy electric thing, so you can truly do, I'd say, most of that 30 miles of electric range, fully in electric mode before you have to even use this gas engine, unless you need to go full throttle. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed with the whole combo altogether. Alright, so I've been driving the GT for a little while longer here now, and over the past few hours, it has certainly grown on me a little more. Whenever it does detect some harder braking, then it will do some downshifts, and it seems to get the message a little bit better that I'm looking for some, sportier action out of the transmission. So it certainly is getting better, and I think, if it had just slightly sharper steering, hands down, I would say this is better handling as far as the suspension setup compared to the CX-30 Turbo. And honestly, it's even tighter than the Kona N, I think, at least in its softer setting that has a variable adaptive suspension, and it really is a lot of fun for what it is. I'm really impressed. The only other little critique I will say is that I wish that these dual mode dampers had greater variation between the two modes, because in sport mode here it's a little firmer, but it's really tough to even tell. You can certainly feel a little more of the vibrations in the road and stuff whenever you are in the sport mode, but I wish there was a greater change. I wish it was buttery soft in the non-sport mode and nice and stiff in the sport mode. There isn't as much of that differentiation as I would like to see, but otherwise, it still is such a fun thing, and just the fact that you get this for $30,000 starting, it's impressive. And so really the last two things here to mention are the fuel economy and the pricing here of the Hornet GT. So first off, fuel economy. These are rated at 21 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 24 combined. Over my driving here, I've been doing about between 25 to 26.5 mpg is what I've been seeing on, the spirited back roads, a little bit of highway. Your mileage will vary, and I'll have to wait till I have one of these for a whole week to really see, what daily driving, fuel economy is like. But, as far as the EPA stuff goes, it's honestly, it's not the best, but considering how much power it's putting out, I would say that it's really not much of a fuel economy penalty over, some of the much slower competitors, which don't do much better on fuel economy, honestly. If you do want the best fuel economy possible, that RT version, if you're willing to go up to that, gives you, better fuel economy with that smaller engine and the hybrid capability that has. So great that you do offer that for those who are interested in that, but I think, this is still going to be really great, especially at the price point. And that brings me to the last thing here, the pricing of the Hornet. So before destination, they start at like just under $30,000. With destination, it's basically $31,500. And even at that price point, though, it's still pretty impressive, with all the standard tech that you get, all the nice features, and again, that standard power for that money is really impressive. And you can pay that amount of money for a vehicle that has basically half as much power as this does, and actually has worse tech than this does as well. So it really is impressive if you are careful with the options. This one, as tested with the track pack, which is $3,000, with the tech package, which is another like $2,250, and the blacktop package, which is another $2,000, plus the $5,000 extra for the plus version here, which gives you the nicer features and all that. There are a few discounts there, so the packages sometimes cancel each other out a little bit with some of the features. But anyway, the grand total for this one is $42,805. And at that price point, that's where it gets tough, because obviously these are great packages, and there are some packages and equipment you don't get offers, and you can get a fully loaded one of those for like $37 or $38. And again, I would say this handles better, aside from I like the Mazda steering better, but I think this has the better suspension setup. But if you're okay giving up a little bit of grip, those don't have performance tires, unless again you are okay with pretty bare bones Hornet. You don't need the black appearance stuff, you don't need the track package stuff, because you do still get Koni dampers even on the non-track pack version. It's just that you get the 2-mode thing. But since the 2 modes aren't a huge change, and the Brembo brakes you get are a nice touch as well. But I personally think that you could probably do without the track pack. Skipping out on that, you save $3,000. Blacktop thing, skipping out on that, you save $2,000. That knocks $5,000.
Welcome to Classic Game Room, broadcasting from the Intergalactic Space Arcade, where I love to destroy things with spaceships and airplanes. But how about helicopters, like the one in Under Defeat HD for the PlayStation 3? Have helicopter will destroy in Under Defeat HD, a vertical scrolling helicopter shooting game like Twin Cobra. It's time to rain terror from above with a whirlybird. Kind of like Airwolf, except the pilots are much cuter than Jan Michael Vincent. This is from Shoot 'em Up veteran G-Rev, and while I don't think it has a Western release, the import copy will play on a Western PlayStation 3, and as you can see, it rocks. The original Under Defeat was on the Sega Dreamcast, which is a highly collectible game. I don't have that one, but I'm pretty impressed with this HD version, a re-release or remake of Under Defeat, which has several versions of gameplay and online leaderboards, where I'm trying to beat my high score in this game, but annoyingly I don't quite get it. I can never beat my high scores while recording for the show. In order to qualify for the leaderboards, I'm playing a normal with 2 extra lives. The New Order mode has different music than the arcade version and a wider HD presentation, which gives you more room to fly around. This also has the arcade mode, and I'll show you that later, as well as 2 remixed versions, where they basically flip the screen and increase the chance you're going to fly into something. They also mix up some of the backgrounds and give you a ton of trophies if you're into that stuff. Under Defeat HD is tricky because of the unique scoring system, where you'd like to destroy things with your option, that little thing flying around with me. That scores bigger points when it blows things up, and it needs time to recharge, which means you have to stop firing for a while, which kind of sucks later in the game. So it's tricky to juggle a few things at once here, and that's what makes the game fun. It's not one of the more chaotic shooters that I've played. It's actually a good one for those just getting into the genre, because it's tough, but it's not insane, at least not until the end. The last couple bosses are just absurd. And I flew right into some gunfire there. Dumb mistake, but, it happens frequently. I'm going to play bomb heavy for the rest of the game so I can try to get through as much of it as possible. As you continue playing Under Defeat, you earn credits that you can use to continue, so it's not hard to play through the entire game, but breaking 1 or 2 million is tough. When you blow up the helicopters that look like the G.I. Joe Tomahawk, they drop options, and if you collect the one that you're using, you'll get 5,000 points for it. There's 3 choices: a Vulcan cannon, bombs, and a stronger, slower cannon. That's my preferred option of choice. It does the most damage on a consistent basis. There's some slowdown when things get really chaotic, and that frequently works in your favor. The music is all very good, and there's different tunes depending on which version you're playing. And the control scheme is somewhat unique for a shooter like this, and it works quite well. You hold down the fire button to strafe, and then you rotate your helicopter depending on if you're moving left or right. So it's not a twin-stick control, you just use one of the thumbsticks or the D-pad. There's really few things in life more fun than just disassembling a battleship like this, bit by bit, with giant explosions. Note that when my option takes out something, it scores a ×2 on the top left. I give it mad props like my little buddies in Musha. Sadly, that particular game ends in a fiery mess, but here's a look at the arcade version where it keeps the vertical aspect ratio of the arcade machine, and it delivers different music. This is also the extra version where the background is slightly different, and the screen is for the show by a Twin Cobra fan, our friend Pierre from Ontario, Canada, who also donated Dodonpachi Resurrection, as well as Eschatos, which I actually thought was called Wonder Prince from the packaging, which says Wonder Price. A big thanks once again to Pierre to win various gameplay modes, which you can see lovingly portrayed by the artists here. It's Under Defeat HD, which must stand for Hot Dames Piloting Helicopters.
Recognize the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO, because we all know that, looking from an historical perspective, NATO members have brought their national issues to the
Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine. Brought to you by
Pep Boys, we're car people. Motor Week starting. It's my kind of show. It's our kind of show. All about cars and trucks. The cool stuff people put on their cars and trucks. And there are tips on tires and service, and maybe we should just watch. I agree. Right with you.
And by
What are you looking for? eBay Motors.
Your host for Motor Week, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome again to Motor Week. We're glad to have you with us. Unassuming economy cars like this Mitsubishi Lancer or the Subaru Impreza are great from getting you from point. If they can, which one has the sharper edge? To find out, we grabbed both the 2004 Subaru Impreza WRX STI and the 2003 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution and hit the gas. Both machines come from a long line of race winners, having been inspired by each company's formidable World Rally Championship cars. And they do look like race cars with hyper-aggressive bodywork that appeals to both hardcore race fans and today's import tuner crowd as well. They back up that bold styling with chassis and drivetrains tuned to deliver a dynamic driving experience. The all-wheel drive Lancer Evolution is new to America, but is actually the 8th generation of a car that was first introduced in Japan in 1992. This serious competitor has a deep arrowhead nose, lightweight aluminum hood with large cooling vent, and tall composite rear wing. Inside, the Lancer is equipped with body-hugging Recaro seats, a stylish Momo steering wheel, and upgraded gauges with a 160-mile-per-hour speedometer. Spinning that Speedo is a hyper-tuned 2-liter dual-overhead cam 4-cylinder. Its 271 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque is by way of a sophisticated twin-scroll turbocharger and a large air-to-air intercooler for 19 pounds of boost. A water spray further lowers intake temperatures to increase charge density and shifts that power through a 5-speed manual gearbox. All 4 wheels are turned by a twin differential driveline with a viscous coupling to adjust power distribution, and are themselves a one-piece 17-inch design by NK, slowed by Brembo disc and calipers. It's all slick and trick, but it's not alone in the super compact class, because Subaru has finally unleashed its ultimate Impreza WRX, the STI, on the U.S. market. STI stands for Subaru Technica International, think Japanese AMG. Like its Mitsubishi rival, the WRX STI is built on a heavily reinforced version of a standard subcompact platform. And like the Lancer, boasts a more aggressive rally-inspired front end, with a massive hood scoop to collect cool air for the intercooler and a rally-sized rear wing. Inside, there's no radio or floor mats to save weight, but there are Subaru's own sports seats, which are a bit flatter yet wider than the Lancer's Recaros. Plus an STI brand small diameter steering wheel and revised gauges with a center-mounted 9,000 RPM tach. Revolutions come from line stutter, as does the light accurate shifter. Power starts down low and then hits like a truck at 5,000 RPM. Gear ratios are perfectly spaced to keep the engine in its 6,000 to 7,000 RPM sweet spot all through the run. And run we did to Charlestown, West Virginia, and Summit Point Raceway's challenging Jefferson Circuit. As on the straight and narrow drag strip, the Evo and STI exhibited very different characters on the twists and turns of a road course. Coming into a corner, the Evo's brakes deliver decent power but feel soft with little feedback. On turn-in, however, the car feels light and responsive, changing direction easily and exhibiting moderate push at mid-corner. Steering feel is spot on. Shifter also make it easier to handle in stop-and-go traffic. On the showroom floor, the Lancer Evolution scores well with a base price of $29,582, and that includes a stereo and floor mats. The Impreza STI costs $31,545, almost $2,000 more than the Lancer, but you definitely get more muscle for your money. But come on, guys, no radio? Staff opinions were pretty much split along hairlines, the Evo appealing most to our youth core, while the STI won the favor of those with grayer follicles. While overall we'll give a slight edge to the STI, we've never tested 2 cars that are this close to being equals. But whether you pick the 2003 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution or the 2004 Subaru Impreza WRX STI, you will get performance equal to some of the world's most expensive sports cars for way less than half the price, and a serious dose of fast and furious style to back it up. Both cars are aimed at the same very exciting destination. They just have different but equally entertaining ways of getting there.
ECOWAS bloc of Western-backed African nations was quick to launch a
platform of the alliance whenever any particular topic came to the agenda.
Let's to thank one of our sponsors, Farmers Insurance.
I've seen this movie before.
You have?
Sure. This is the part where all is lost and the hero searches for hope. Then a mysterious figure reminds her that she has the Farmer's Home Policy Perk guaranteed replacement cost, and that her home will be rebuilt regardless of her limits or if the cost of materials has gone up.
That's really something.
Get a whole lot of something with Farmer's Policy Perks. Wait, I didn't ruin the ending, did I?
Yeah, you did.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.